Kyle Hightower joining me now. One of my favorite guys to come on to Sportsnet to talk about the Celtics, but he covers all things New England. I'm sure your attention is focused squarely, though, in the NBA with where the Celtics are and facing elimination tonight. Thanks for being with me, Kyle. A lot of people coming into this series picked Jaylen Brown as sort of the X factor if the Celtics were going to, in fact, get this done. I mean, what have you observed about his performance so far, and is that going to be the case again tonight?
It's like all the Celtics, right? They've all had their moments. Jaylen Brown has obviously been the most consistent piece for the Celtics this series, and kind of kept them in it, and kind of kept them on track to upend the Warriors. But he's had his moments of inconsistency as well. But I think it will take another strong effort from him if the Celtics are going to force a deciding Game 7. For whatever reason, Jason Tatum being on this stage is not really kind of meshed with him just yet. That's not to say he can't have a breakout game. He's not capable of it. Obviously, he's shown throughout his young career that he's capable of putting up 40 points on any given night. But I think he's going to need that help. And you look at who's that's going to be on the roster. You look squarely at Jaylen Brown.
Could you envision a scenario tonight on the home floor where Tatum has that kind of rebound, sort of redemptive performance that he's been looking for all series?
I can. It's because, I mean, he knows the stakes. He talked about it, yesterday, that, the stakes are high. He knows everyone's looking at him. He knows that if he's going to, truly respond and be on that superstar stage that he so covets and wants to be on and wants to be considered on, that he's got to perform better. Those spot performances here and there aren't enough. When it's money time, when the stakes are super high, obviously the highest they've been, they're facing elimination for the fourth time this playoffs. He's got to be the guy who steps up. So I think he's going to definitely make that effort. But he's also facing a juggernaut in the Warriors that are going to do their best to win their fourth title in 8 seasons.
On Tatum, Kyle, a lot of people used his motivation coming into this series, his relationship with Kobe Bryant as fodder, the text messages that he sent and the way that he's kind of put Kobe front and center as something to almost mock or laugh at. I mean, when I think about maybe his mentality coming into this series or what he's using to get motivated, does this come down to a measure of inexperience or maybe having focus elsewhere? I mean, why do you think that Tatum hasn't been able to dial in the way that so many people expected him to?
I would say that, you don't know what it takes to win on this level until you're in it. Obviously, in his young career, he's been to the conference finals several times. He's been on the brink of getting to that final stage. But until you're in it, until you're you feel the pressure of from everything from the outside, to you're feeling those bumps and and that physicality from your opponent. Until the ball's in your hand in the fourth quarter, you don't know what it takes to get over that hump. I think that takes a learning process. Everyone, you look at what he's done in his career thus far, and you say, okay, he should be ready to do it. But he's still his mid-20s. He's still inching his way into the prime of his career. And every one of the stars who've been on that stage before and previously, LeBron James, Stephen Curry, guys of his recent preceded him recently, they've all had to have their breakthrough moment. Will that be for him this season or in this series? We'll wait and see. But I think he's on the verge of it, but he's got to learn to do it. It's not really kind of a sort of magic bullet, if you will, to do it. You just have to be in that moment, be in that zone he's been in so many times. And when you have that moment, I think you never look back. But he's still waiting to do it. It could be in Game 6. If they do it, in the Game 7, of course, it's another big stage that he has to perform on. So it's kind of a wait and see, but I think it's just a matter of him actually having the moment and completed it. And everyone before him, Kobe Bryant, his mentor, they've all been in the similar shoes, but he has to do it in his own time. And obviously, a lot of people want him to happen right now.
You mentioned the Warriors as a juggernaut, and they certainly have maybe more talented players, but those in Boston might argue that the Celtics have a more complete team. I mean, the Warriors have looked beatable at times. They've looked vulnerable at times. The Celtics defense has been able to exploit some of those matchups. What ultimately do you think Boston needs to do tonight in order to neutralize some of the shooting and really kind of get their own stuff together offensively and ultimately force a Game 7?
The numbers don't lie. The magic number for the Celtics in this series has been 16. They turned the ball over 16 times or more, they've lost. When they turn over 15 or less, they've been in a position and they've been able to strike through and win. 1-7 in the postseason when they've committed 16 or more turnovers. If they can find a way to not give the ball away, to not give the Warriors those opportunities to get out and run those open shots that Klay Thompson and Stephen Curry live and breathe on, then they're going to be in a better position. They have the scores, they have the athleticism and Tatum and Brown. They have the defenders. They have the defense they've shown throughout the playoffs to get it done. Number one defense. They've kind of extended that from the regular season into the postseason. If they do that, they're in a great position. If that number creeps up and past 16, they're in a world of trouble.
Is that the message that you can gather that Udoka is kind of preaching heading into this particular matchup, is that the mistakes have to be cleaned up?
Absolutely. We pressed him over and over again throughout the series, about making changes, about making adjustments is there something they have to do to their formula to get over that hump. And he's been adamant that, they're confident in what they do. It's a matter of limiting their own mistakes. They think that what they've thrown at this Warriors team has been enough to win. And, it's bared out to that 2-1 lead, doing exactly what the Celtics do, playing great defense and getting out and running, pushing and pushing the pace against this much now older Warriors core overall. You're talking about Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green. They're the old guys in the series, and the Celtics are kind of the young, if you will, almost version of what they were in 2015. That team who plays great defense, gets out and runs, is athletic, and beats you that way. So it's a matchup of the kind of the new Celtics, which kind of mirror the old Warriors, and the older Warriors trying to beat kind of a team that kind of mirrors what they were when they first started this championship run.
Yeah, it was a fascinating way to frame it coming in. The Celtics have been on the brink so many times and had a number of setbacks. And now you have this Warriors team who's desperate to kind of extend this dynasty window. If Golden State doesn't get this championship, how many more chances do you see them having? Or is this really kind of a last and final attempt with not only the core group they have intact, but some of these players coming off the bench that have been really valuable to get another championship within this particular window?
It's interesting because, Stephen Curry, Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, they're not going anywhere. I think they'll be career Golden State Warriors. But they have this young group coming behind them. Jordan Poole, Kuminga, who hasn't had a lot of run this series, but he's there still developing. Kevon Looney's still going to be there in the middle. They have guys coming up. Gary Payton II, he's right there. They have people in the offing who are going to be there to support that core group as they get older. And of course, as you get older as a group, you learn different ways to win. I think that's not going to change. I think we're going to see. Obviously, that group is kind of on the downslope of their career, that core three, but they're still great basketball players. They're still all-stars there. Klay Thompson still hasn't had his best basketball, really coming back from those two catastrophic injuries. So I think that the window is still going to be there for them. It's just a matter of how much they can develop or how fast they can develop those young guys behind them to stay in the mix, which is what's going to be a very, very tough Western Conference over the next 2 to 3 years.
I know you've spent a lot of time with Jaylen Brown covering this team, and you have written and spent some time kind of analyzing the evolution, his trajectory, and the arc of where that he is now. How would you describe the growth and the development that you've seen? We've seen from the outside a lot of personal maturity, growth, and development. He's one of the players that is really outspoken on a number of key issues. And then on the floor, of course, he continues to kind of develop and improve and is impressed so far this series. How would you analyze what we've seen from him over the last couple of years?
I think you've seen a player who's really feels comfortable now and where he's at in his career. He kind of acknowledged this week that, he didn't feel like he was always utilized to the best of his abilities since he's been in Boston. I don't know if that was a direct shot at the former coach and now president of basketball operations, Brad Stevens, or more just kind of a self-assessment saying, hey, there was a lot of focus on Jason Tatum and kind of building the team around him, but I kind of want to let everybody know, hey, I'm still here. I can still play at that level, and he's now risen to that all-star level the last 2 years. And I think he's more comfortable in being a Boston Celtics. He's more comfortable in being a Boston Celtics than he ever has been before in his still young career. And I think that portends well for the Celtics' continued growth going forward. Jason Tatum's going to get better, but you have a second guy, a homegrown guy in Jaylen Brown, who's here as well. You pair that with Marcus, you pair those two with Marcus Smart, and again some younger players who are in the mix there. A young, hungry coach in Ime Udoka. I think that that portends well for their development, their future in the Eastern Conference to kind of challenge Giannis, challenge that that Nets team who's still trying to build that super team. So it's kind of be homegrown versus super teams going forward. And I think the Celtics are in good shape to contend with Jaylen Brown, with Jason Tatum, and with the guys coming up behind them.
It's interesting, the relationship between him and Danny Ainge and compared to Ime Udoka. I mean, Udoka has gotten so much credit over the last couple of months for not only turning this team around, but also helping them reach the finals. How key has he been with Jaylen's personal development? And is this a coach that this entire group wants to play for, maybe differently than they've had in seasons past?
I think you're onto something there. I think that, when the coaching search began, when Brad Stevens was bumped up and moved up into the front office position that he's in now, they went to Jason Tatum, went to Jaylen Brown and said, what kind of coach do you want to kind of be in here? They said they want a guy who's going to challenge us, a guy who's going to push us probably more than you did, talking about Brad Stevens, over the last few years. And that's not initially a shot at Brad Stevens. It's a realization by the players. They felt like they weren't being pushed to get enough out of them from their coach. And I think Ime Udoka hasn't shied away from that. He's got up in their face. He's called them out publicly, something that Brad Stevens would never do. He's kind of put a mirror up to them and said, this is who you are. If you want to be at that next level, here's what you got to do to get there. And I think that's the coach that they asked for. I think they're getting the coach that they need to get to that level. I mean, look, Ime Udoka is from the Craig Popovich tree. It's they have their ways, they have their philosophies and their strategies, and they stick to them, but they're not easy on their players at all. They push them. I mean, Tim Duncan was pushed hard by Greg Popovich. And I think you're seeing, a young coach in Udoka his first year who's saying, hey, you are a star level. I'm going to help you get to where you want to be at, but you got to be better, and I'm going to help you get there.
What's the latest, Kyle, on Robert Williams' availability for tonight and how he's feeling?
I mean, I think it's been day to day throughout the series, and I think there's no way he misses this game tonight. But it's a matter of how comfortable he feels in this game. He's again, coming from the West Coast, you have that extra day to rest and to get treatment on that knee. I think that's gonna be in his favor going into Game 6. He had the short rest in Game 5 and it was still productive, still in the mix there. But I think there's no way possible he misses this game tonight. And he's going to be in there doing what he does, protecting the rim for the Celtics team.
And just lastly for you, Kyle, before we kind of shift gears here, regardless of what happens in this series, what happens tonight, what happens in Game 7, what should the Celtics, and I realize that this is a little bit evergreen because it might post depending on what ultimately is the outcome of this series. But if you'll just kind of indulge me in a second in going 30,000-foot view here, what should the Celtics ultimately take away from how they were able to manage a slower start to the year, a critical turning point, and then making it to the NBA Finals regardless of the outcome?
I think the macro view here is that they're in good shape. I think if you would ask before this season, how long is it going to take for the Celtics to be in the mix, you would have said, 2-3 years. But I think people have kind of forgotten that, as I said before, this is a homegrown unit. Now, this group is not a group that's kind of been put together trying to mesh and gel together. They've been around each other, this core group, for 3, 4, 5 years. And, that portends well for them, going forward. Ime Udoka is only going to learn from this experience. Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, regardless of the outcome, are going to learn from this experience. They've proven they can beat Milwaukee, granted it once without one of their key players, but they took down Giannis in 7 games. They took down the top seeded Heat in 7 games. Those are 2 teams that are going to be there in the mix going forward. They swept Brooklyn, which is there, in the first round, which is the team everybody was looking at. So again, that homegrown, talented team is kind of, I think, the next step or the next trend in the NBA. It's a few teams have had the patience, which is kind of a dirty word in the NBA, to let things develop. But this franchise has, and it's paying dividends now. And it's caught this team at a time when these guys are just now entering their prime. So I think that, the larger view for the Celtics team is that win or lose this series, they're going to be right there in the mix for the next 2 to 3 years.
Have they already done enough for other organizations to notice this formula that you're pointing to of this homegrown kind of unit that's been allowed enough time to develop and grow together and learn with each other? I mean, they are a young squad. The expectations are exponentially high with how talented they are. But with everything that they've accomplished, do you think that other organizations around the league are saying, okay, maybe we need to emulate that formula. Maybe we need to go for high character guys, quality guys, give them some time to mature and develop, as opposed to bouncing around the league, picking whichever big star is available, trying to plug them into a system, whether it fits or not, which is, hasn't really yielded results, at least in this particular season.
Yeah, I think so for a couple of reasons. One, I think for the failure of the kind of the big threes that have kind of been the teams have been trying to put together in recent years. Brooklyn still hasn't figured it out. This was their best, their healthiest year thus far, and they were swept in the first round by the Celtics. The Milwaukee Bucks, granted they had, Giannis is definitely a homegrown guy who they kind of built and developed around him. They brought in Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton is a homegrown guy who's been there. It kind of brought in pieces around those guys who kind of helped develop, and you built from there. The Lakers had that one kind of great season in the bubble when they brought Anthony Davis, but then they kind of imploded this year. So I think just the overall failures of this kind of super team attempts is pointing to like maybe there's a different way to do this, right? Because it's only happened a few times where like the kind of manufactured big threes and super teams have kind of been able to break through and win titles in recent years. And two, I think just from the success that Celtics are having, success that a team like Toronto had, even though they brought in Kawhi kind of for a year to kind of get them over the hump, they're still a team that's still in the mix there, that's kind of built on homegrown talent. Milwaukee, as I mentioned before, that's where we're going in the NBA now. Phoenix, they brought in Chris Paul later in his career, but they're built around Devin Booker, a guy who's been there. Other guys, in their rotation who've been there before. So I think that bodes well for the idea of you don't have to go shopping for stars to kind of mesh together a team. You can look within, and I think the Celtics are a prime example of that right now.
Kyle Hightower, fantastic stuff. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Carolyn.